What is up, everybody? The Red Dragon here. Hope you're having a good Friday the 13th. You know, Friday the 13th, that's one of those days that's shrouded in mystery and mystique. A lot of superstitious people believe that bad things go wrong on Friday the 13th. So where exactly did this superstition form and how did it begin? Well, to understand this, you actually have to go back a pretty long ways. And I'm talking about further than the Jason movies with the ski mask. We're talking about going back all the way to the time of the Crusades, around the year 1100. Now, at this time, religion was a huge force all over the world. And you had the church, you had Europe, and you had the Middle East and the Muslims. Now, the Pope decided they were going to cause a holy war. They thought the Christians should be in control of Jerusalem, so they pushed in to the holy sites in the Middle East, which started the Crusades. That's a really rough draft of the Crusades. So during the Crusades, a small group of knights formed. It started out with 9 knights, but eventually grew to thousands. And this force eventually became known as the Knights Templar. So they were like, if I could compare them to something today, they were like a special force or Delta Team squad, a very small but super elite force. They were very disciplined, well-trained, highly skilled, and they were known and respected around the land. And it was said that if they had odds 3-1, they felt that was a fair fight. The only time they were ever able to retreat was if they faced odds greater than 3-1. So eventually they grew in force, and the Pope sent them to go help fight in the Crusades. Once they got there, it didn't take them long before they saw a lot of successful battles where they went in and won. And so eventually they gained a lot more power, a lot more fame, a lot more respect around Europe. So one of the leaders went to go meet with the Pope, and the next thing you know, they have been given Solomon's old temple. So the Knights Templar sets up headquarters in Solomon's old temple, and it is said that they were looking for something while they were there. So in between fighting battles, they were searching. So they were digging tunnels, and some people claim, actually a lot of people claim, that they found something. Now, controversy shows up when we talk about what they found. Some people believe it was Solomon's old treasure that was talked about in ancient times. Some people believe it was the head of John the Baptist or an ancient secret that the church didn't want getting out. So there's a really long debate, the Ark of the Covenant, whatever, that it could have been that they found. But one thing is for sure, that in those days they blew up with power, respect, and all of a sudden they found new wealth, and a lot of it. And some of these things, people who wrote down what they saw as far as the wealth, as far as the Knight Templars go, they talked about seeing in one portion 50,000 pounds of sterling silver, which would have been the equivalent of like Fort Knox, and that was just a small amount that was like borrowed. And so all these people started borrowing money from them, and really the Knights Templar were the first bankers in the world. So they started up a system with this newfound wealth where you could go to them, deposit money, get a receipt, and then take that somewhere else and get that equivalent of the money back wherever it is that you were going. So that allowed for safe travels and all sorts of things. They also allowed people to borrow money and return it with 10% interest. So they really were the first bankers. So that maybe helps you to understand how they could form such powerful wealth in such a very short period of time. So a lot of people think they found wealth. Even if they didn't, eventually there's no doubt they became very wealthy and very powerful. There was a time, however, where things started to decline, and they declined pretty drastically. Just like today, history always repeats itself. In those days, after a long, drawn-out war with the Crusades, you had people who were just getting tired. They were getting tired of all the casualties. They were getting tired of the monetary system, you know, being flooded in to support those wars. So they were losing money, they were losing family members, and they were getting tired of the wars and the Crusades. The Knight Templars, however, wanted to continue the wars because people profit from wars. So they wanted to keep pushing forward. Eventually, though, they started losing a lot of battles. The Muslims ended up building a force and coming back and kind of scattering the Knights Templar. Well, while they were being called, the Pope ended up calling the leader of the Knights Templar back when they were forced out, and they were going to talk about maybe what their next step should be if they were going to go in and try to start a crusade somewhere else. While at this time, he was taken to the meeting in France. The king was there, and he knew that the leader of the Knights Templar was also going to be there. Now, the problem for the king was that him and a lot of other people were in heavy debt to the bankers, to the Knights Templar. So what the king decided to do was he told the Pope, or he had the guards arrest the Knight Templar leaders, and this all happened on Friday the 13th, like in 1300. So the Knights Templar was a very large and powerful force all the way for like a couple of hundred years. So, and then all of a sudden on Friday the 13th, that's when they were all arrested. Now the king laid out all kinds of charges against them. You know, he said, you know, they kissed each other's butt literally, you know, in ceremonies before people were let in, and that they worshiped the devil, and that they, you know, kissed each other and, you know, fondled whatever. So he laid all these charges against them, claimed that they were heretics, and had them all arrested. So this worked out good for him because he can turn around and say, look, if I take care of the people who I owe all this debt to, I don't owe any debt to anybody. So this worked out really good for the king. And so eventually, it didn't actually happen on Friday the 13th. The actual arrest came and happened on the Friday the 13th. But eventually, all the leaders were tried, and a large portion and a large population of the Knights Templar was arrested and killed. And the leader, the main guy over the Knights Templar, he was actually slowly burned at the stake. Now it is said that while he was burning at the stake, he actually cried out to the Pope and the king that within 1 year they would join him. And sure enough, within 1 year, both the Pope and the king were dead. So there's a lot of mythology and legend that surrounds the Knight Templar, and when you go into where this actual treasure and wealth went, because it turns out the king never did get the wealth from the Knights Templar. It turns out that several escaped, and a lot of that's all you ever heard about it written down in history until fairly recent history, when they have, you know, discovered a lot of writings and connections to the Knights Templar and also to the Freemasons that you may have heard about. So another secret society. But either way, a lot of people say that the Knights Templar were able to run away and escape the king before the actual arrest took place. So there were a few of them that got out ahead of everybody else getting arrested, and they were able to take that wealth. And to this day, they don't know exactly where it is. Now, there's a lot of different theories and belief. One of them, of course, is Rosslyn Chapel, which, if you're into all this stuff, I'm sure you've probably heard about and read, which is an interesting, you know, place and piece of history, and something that could be held, you know, in a 3-hour discussion in and of itself. So so that about sums it up how Friday the 13th got started. So it is a day shrouded in negativity and bad mojo, all because of power and wealth. So somebody wanted to take out the people whom they had borrowed too much money from. So you can always learn a few things about history and where we are headed, because history does tend to repeat itself. So that does it for this video. If you enjoyed it, please like, comment, and subscribe. Thanks for watching.